Kevin Porter Jr. milking the clock, isoing up top. Now working on Neto. He'll dance, he'll step, he'll shoot, and he hits it at the buzzer. No time left, and the Rockets have won the game.
I really hope what happened January 1st doesn't define the Houston Rockets season. When I look at the Houston Rockets, I see a team that has nothing but talent. They're young, they're going to make mistakes, they're going to learn from those mistakes. But at the end of the day, they cannot let those mistakes define them. In life, no matter what anybody says, nobody is perfect. It's not about how good you are in the moment. It's about your future, and it's about how you bounce back. When I talk about the Houston Rockets, I want to talk about Josh Christopher throwing alley-oops to Jalen Green. I want to talk about Şengün's unbelievable court vision, how he aspires to be the next Jokic, how he's been taking the league by storm and crushing all expectations despite only being 19 years old. I told you guys H-Town has talent, right? I can go on and on about how good this team can be, but right now we have to talk about the Rockets' introduction to the new year and how that same introduction to the new year outshined a 29-point performance by the number 2 pick in this year's NBA draft. January 1st, the Rockets would face off against the Denver Nuggets. I have Christian Wood in fantasy, but beyond having Christian Wood in fantasy, I'm also a fan of the team. I have a ton of love for H-Town, but while we're talking about love, I didn't really love how the night started. I knew it was going to be a weird night from the jump, because I thought Christian Wood was getting traded. While taking the court, Christian Wood would randomly sprint back into the Rockets locker room. Christian Wood doing this stirred up a ton of speculation, especially upon Rockets fans. With the emergence of Şengün and the inconsistencies and complaints of Christian Wood, I figured it would only be a matter of time before we would see Christian Wood finally getting traded. While a trade didn't happen, I definitely wouldn't be surprised to see one in the near future, and I'll get more into that a little later. Wood would be benched to start the game versus the Denver Nuggets, and yet of course, Wood being benched wouldn't be the weirdest thing to happen this game. Let's get into some specifics. According to Shams, Wood would be benched to start the game because he missed a mandatory testing window. Lucas called out the entire team at halftime and focused on Wood's effort level. Porter had a heated exchange with the longtime assistant and drove out of the arena at halftime. Also, apparently Wood would be late to pregame warmups. Hey, I guess when it rains, it pours. While Porter Jr. would leave at halftime, Christian Wood chose to not enter the game again. Pretty wild story, right? Well, check this out. According to Woj, at least one of the team's younger players challenged Wood, telling him that as a veteran, Wood should be setting a standard on the team. I'm not sure who this younger player was, and I'm not really going to guess, but I think it's a very awesome stance for this younger player to take, especially seeing how much the Rockets have been through this season. The Rockets definitely are in a position where they have to come together. Years like this are so important for young players. There's no way around it. If Christian Wood doesn't want to commit to building a winning atmosphere in Houston, to building a winning culture, then unfortunately the Rockets may have to look in other directions. Remember what I said to you guys about Şengün? This guy has been absolutely taking the NBA by storm. Me saying that he's been outplaying his draft position doesn't tell the half of how good he is or can be. A lot of people in the H, including myself, think that he has franchise cornerstone potential, and when you watch him play, you definitely understand why. I've been thinking of doing a dedicated player breakdown for him, but of course that would have to be something that you guys would want. The Rockets would go on to suspend Wood and Porter Jr. 1 game each, and Silas would go on to call Christian Wood and Kevin Porter's suspensions 2 very different circumstances that are unfortunately being lumped together. My question to you guys is, what do you think that Silas means by this? It's worth noting that since the incident, Porter Jr. has been apologetic. As a matter of fact, it's also worth noting that John Lucas and Kevin Porter Jr. have a fantastic relationship. I truly do believe that the Rockets care about the well-being of Kevin Porter Jr. There's a chance that this Kevin Porter Jr. situation was just another bump in the road. Those aren't my words, so don't get mad at me. Those are also the words of the Rockets' current head coach, Stephen Silas. I honestly think that Silas had a point. It's been very apparent to me that Kevin Porter Jr. absolutely loves being in Houston. As a matter of fact, He said that I want to be here for a while. I needed a change of scenery and they picked me up while I was down. I'm just in a better space, better role. Houston knew how to utilize me and nurture me. He even goes as far to say that the Rockets saved his life. Oh yeah, and he also said that I love John Lucas.
Yeah, this organization, saved my life potentially. So definitely a big fresh air. And I just love being here, and I want to be here for a while. So
I was watching an ESPN segment earlier, and during that segment, they said that Wood had developed a bunch of bad habits that don't necessarily coincide with winning. Earlier this season, Christian Wood would be asked about the difficulty of matching up with one of the league's best players in Nikola Jokic. Wood's response literally gets me every single time. Quote, "Wasn't difficult. I think it could have been better if I was more involved in the offense." Wood would follow up this quote by playing very poor defense and not necessarily trying to play winning basketball. Every time he touched the ball, he would pass it. He looked lackadaisical. It was really a performance that you just don't want to see from somebody that has the talent that Christian Wood does. Did I mention that when he got benched versus the Denver Nuggets, he did the same thing but in kind of another way? Lazy shot selection, no defense, 0 of 4 from the field, and 0 of 3 from the three-point line, and only 8 minutes of play. To be honest with you guys, as a Christian Wood fantasy owner, things are looking rough. The crazy thing is, before this stuff even happened, I was literally thinking about how I had to trade Christian Wood while he still had some value. That's the unfortunate thing also for the Houston Rockets. While Christian Wood is such a good basketball player when he's locked in and his head is on straight, sometimes you just really don't know what you're getting with him. If the Rockets were able to trade Christian Wood for basically any positive value or assets, I would mark that trade as a massive W for the Houston Rockets. The problem with trying to trade Wood right now is his value isn't necessarily the highest, which is still so crazy to say considering how good he could be. This guy is 7 feet tall. He can stretch you out to the perimeter. He can attack the basket. He can beat you off the dribble. He can show you what it's like to have a 20-20 guy on your team. That isn't me saying that he's going to go out and get you 20-20 every single night. That's me saying that any given game, he can be a threat to go out and get 20 points and 20 boards. Oh, and by the way, he's a monster athlete. He throws down some nice dunks and he blocks some shots that should not be blocked. But the problem is, as I said earlier, you just don't know when you're getting that version of Christian Wood. This season, Christian Wood is averaging 17 points and 10 boards in 31 minutes a game. He's shooting 47% from the field and 34% from the three-point line. It's worth noting that last season, he was up to 21 points per game on over 51% from the field. If you were a team in need of one more piece, would you guys take a shot on Christian Wood? Also, what would you do with KPJ? With KPJ, talent has never necessarily been the issue. Man, last season, this guy gave Drew Holiday 50.
You see Drew? Yes, sir, Skate.
A lot of NBA players, including Kevin Durant, regard Drew Holiday as one of the toughest defenders in the game. I told myself that I wasn't going to do this, but you know what? In honor of KPJ, I have to do it. According to NBC Sports, one of the reasons that Christian Wood signed with the Rockets over other invested teams was that he wanted to play with James Harden. It's no secret that Harden is gone. In the past, Wood has expressed a desire to stay with the Houston Rockets, but at the end of the day, business is business. While Wood has definitely wanted to be the man in Houston, I wonder if there's any shot that he would take a back seat on a winning team. I also wonder if him wanting to play with James Harden has anything to do with play style. Could you guys see Wood being a Dallas Maverick? Or perhaps a Los Angeles Laker? Perhaps playing with a well-respected player like LeBron James would be one of the situations where Wood would be able to get his head on straight. Of course, if Wood were to get traded to the Lakers, I would have to ask myself, what would a package for Wood even look like? Would Lakers fans be willing to part with Austin Reeves? At this point, would a package for Wood even require Austin Reeves from the Los Angeles Lakers? If it included the right picks, Lakers fans, help me out with this down in the comments below. I've seen some people say Washington would be a decent spot, and I've also seen some people recommend Charlotte. Wherever Wood goes, I just hope that he figures things out. Clicking the video on the screen right now is a great way to support my channel. I'm Get Like Coop, bringing you guys the scoop. Until our next upload.